We'll get on with the Common Council meeting. Call the meeting to order. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's do the roll.
Alderman Stralchek,
Here.
Alderman Bushy, Alderman Meyer, Alderman Hancher,
Here.
Alderman Garrow, Alderman Parrish,
Here.
Alderman Schneider,
Here.
Alderman Gebhardt,
Here.
and Mayor Nurbin.
Here. First up, we have a lengthy series of public hearings, so we'll take them in order. First up, we have ordinance 2023-1639, ordinance amending Chapter 50 and Section 46-133 of the Municipal Code relating to nuisances within the city, including noise. This was tabled by Public Welfare Committee on January 10th, recommended by the Public Welfare Committee on February 14th, and the first reading was at Common Council on March 14th last month. This is a public hearing, so we need a motion to enter public hearing.
Move the public hearing. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are now in public hearing. Is there anyone here tonight who wishes to speak on this matter? Seeing none, all those in favor, is there a motion to close public hearing?
Move to close.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor of closing public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
We are back in regular session. We will immediately consider this ordinance. Is there any comments or questions from the council regarding this item? Alderman Stralchek.
I got feedback on the 8 to 8 p.m. on weekends and holidays, and why we need to change that, and what really actually needs to, what the reason is for changing it to 8 p.m. from the 5 p.m. it was previously. People live in Mequon, they want to eat and dine outside, and they just really don't want to listen to a bunch of auxiliary noise while they're trying to have some peaceful enjoyment of their home during the hours in which they're hopefully there. I would personally like to see that back to the 5 and ask staff and or fellow council members what we feel the need is to take it to 8 p.m.
Alderman Meyer.
Thank you for the feedback on that. I'm going to make a motion to retable this again, to take this back to public welfare to take a look at that exact thing for the hours changes. We're also going to take a look at, if it's tabled, take a look at we have it right now combined with commercial and with residential for hours, and then separating those two out. And so we need another kick at the can over here, and I'll wait to have any other comments, and then I'll make the motion to table. But
Are there any other comments?
I make a motion to table is send it back to public welfare.
Motion and a second to table. That's not debatable, so we'll move right on to a vote. There's a motion and a second to table. Please call the roll.
Alderman Stralchek, Alderman Bushy, Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrow, Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
and Alderman Gebhardt.
Aye.
That item is tabled. Moving on to ordinance 2023-1640, an ordinance amending Chapter 58 of the Mequon Municipal Code related to building and site plan requirements for properties located in the town center and arrival corridor zoning districts. This was recommended by Planning Commission on February 27th, recommended by the Committee of the Whole March 14th, and the first reading was at Common Council last month on March 14th. Is there a motion to go into public hearing?
Move to go into public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are in public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this matter? Seeing none, is there a motion to close public hearing?
Move to close public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of closing public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
We are back in regular session and we'll consider this ordinance. at this time. Are there any comments or questions that remain? Or is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further feedback or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That ordinance is adopted. Next up, we have ordinance 2023-1641, an ordinance amending Chapter 58 of the Mequon Municipal Code related to turf grass height limits during the month of May, otherwise known as No Mow May. This was recommended by Public Welfare January 10th, recommended by Planning Commission February 27th, and the first reading was at last month's meeting on March 14th. Is there a motion to go into public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are in public hearing. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak about this or proposed ordinance?
Move to close.
See,
Second.
motion and a second to close public hearing. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We're back. Is there any further questions or comments for staff, or is there a motion?
Move approval.
Move. Second.
Motion and a second. No further comments. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that ordinance is adopted. Next up, ordinance 2023-1642, an ordinance amending Chapter 58 of the Mequon Municipal Code regarding required setbacks and offsets for properties located within the city's R2 2-acre zoning districts. This is recommended by Public Welfare on January 10th, recommended by the Planning Commission on February 27th, and the first reading at Common Council last month on March 14th. Is there a motion to go into public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are in public hearing. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on this item? Seeing none. is
Move
there
to
a
close.
Motion to close. There's a motion
Second.
and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are back in regular session. Is there a motion or any questions on this item?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that ordinance is adopted. Next item is ordinance 2023-1644, an ordinance amending the planned unit development for Newcastle Place, otherwise known as Life Space, located at 12500 to 12700 Northport Washington Road, approving a new concept plan, extending the development timeline, modifying open space requirements, and updating certain approval requirements. This was recommended by the Planning Commission on February 27th, and the first reading was last month at the Council on March 14th. Is there a motion to go into public hearing?
Mayor, I have a conflict of interest, so I'm going to recuse myself on this matter, okay?
Noted, thank you.
Motion to go into public hearing.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are in public hearing. We have one person registered to speak tonight on this item, Mr. Art Liebau of 715 Riverview Drive, wishes to speak. Please approach the podium.
Well, good evening, council members. I wrote a little something up here. Hello, my name's Arthur Liebau. I own the property directly to the south of Newcastle, 1200 and 1202 West Liebau Road, which my grandfather purchased in approximately 1918. And the road is also named after my grandfather, Liebau Road. I do not oppose the planned development. However, when Milwaukee Protestant Home first received approval for the development, they worked closely with the neighbors, providing landscape as a barrier to be less obtrusive to the neighbors and their residential tenants. Originally, as it pertains to my property, Newcastle was responsible for all landscaping as a buffer between our properties and drainage such that it would not affect my property. Setbacks need to be consistent as they were previously on the north of my property when this was originally done. And then lastly, I'd like to be notified of all meetings and be part of discussions as needed to make this a positive process. I was not told about the previous meetings before tonight, so this is the first time I know about this. So it'd be nice being the neighbor whose land they originally purchased for future communication. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Lebo.
Okay.
Are there any other people here tonight who wish to speak on this item? Now is the time to do so if you would like to talk. Please approach the podium, sir, and state your name and address so we can have it recorded into the record.
Name is Doug Reeder. My address is N63W5892 Apple Tree Lane, Cedarburg, Wisconsin, 53012. I own the property immediately to the north of the development in question here. And one of the concerns I would have is this new development increasing the need for water? Because my property was the old Ascension that has now been vacated. And in the future, I'm hoping to redevelop the property. And I've been told that there's a lot of restriction on future development from the standpoint of connecting to the city water and sewer system in that area. So my only concern relevant to this particular development in question is, will this impact my ability to hook up to city sewer and water with a redevelopment on my property?
Thank you. We'll have a staff member come up in a second when we get back into regular session to address any comments along those lines.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak while we're still in public hearing? If not, is there a motion to close public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing.
Motion to, and a second to close. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are back in regular session, so let's maybe address some of the questions or comments we just heard, and then we can bring it back to the council then.
This I'm sorry, the 77% open space ratio, I should have known that, is they're actually, from the original proposal, they're actually showing a lot more of the carriage homes, the single and 2-unit buildings. The original proposal, as you can see on here, shows a couple larger complexes, the 3 and 4-story buildings, which takes up obviously less space. So the current proposal is showing basically having more of the 1 and 2 unit carriage homes, which staff is supportive of. They also saw a second phase where they're adding a couple of little pockets in there. They haven't fully vetted those out as yet, but staff is supportive of those locations as long as they don't impact any specimen trees. There's a large old growth section of forestry in here that we just don't want to have the battle at Planning Commission, so we're making a condition of the PUD that no specimen trees can be removed as part of this project. There's one final comment, I think, and then Brian sent you guys an email today, I believe, about the pilot agreement. The original approval had a pilot agreement. They originally were tax exempt. They went taxable, and I understand now after Planning Commission, they actually applied for tax exempt status again. So we added another condition that would require them to do the pilot as part of this amendment to the PUD. So overall, staff is supportive of the project and can answer any questions if you have any.
Thanks, Jack. Alderman Stralchuk.
I think Newcastle's a great example of a high-end, community within the city. And my grandparents moved there after it was built, lived there for several years. I was part of the community for a while, and they've unfortunately since passed. But I have fond memories of going there and really from a daily interaction over there with my family, was impressed with the quality of the building and the additional structures. I'm supportive of the overall plan. I pulled up Google Maps, and I do see a line of, looks like pine trees to the north of Mr. Liebau's property that looks like that was installed as a screening for the property. So I guess I'd like to address his concerns formally and ask, what we're intending to do to continue to screen this property. I know that we've got some forest in there, but just looking to get a little feedback on what we can do to address his concerns.
Well, I think the biggest issue for him is this area right up in here. So as part of the conditional use and building and site plan, we'll require a landscaping plan, and we can require landscaping screening along this property line as well. I think right now it shows basically it's screened up in here as part of this phase, and we can just continue that screening along.
So as a condition of what we're going to approve here, can I say that?
You can add it as a condition of the PUD if you'd like. I think we can handle it through the conditional use process, but if you want to add a condition, if you feel more comfortable, that's fine.
I don't think it's a big burden on the developer, and I think it benefits Mr. Liebau in the long run. So, yeah, if I get to make the motion, I'll add that as a condition.
You can make it.
I'd move to approve with the condition that screening is worked on with staff to address Mr. Liebau's concern in a similar form to what is to the north of his property.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. We can continue to have conversation now that we have a motion on the table. Any further input into the proposed ordinance? Alderman Meyer.
Just a little back history on it. One of the reasons why also was required 77%, because this was a really contentious development at the time. We had zoning protests on the whole thing, and one of the residents across the street was a major property owner for it that took up a lot of that percentage on it, and they had a side agreement with Newcastle Place to do all the landscaping on their place to shield them, so then withdrew their protest petition to get the whole project inside. But one of the things also was the fact of that common council at the time, and that wanted to make sure that there was a lot of open space for that development. That was one of the reasons why for the 77% also. I think that since history has shown itself that Newcastle Place, or Life Space now, is just a great neighbor, and the concerns at that time that were pretty rampant by a lot of people didn't really come to fruition and they've actually, become, great residents of the city of Mequon, and along with Robert Strelchuk's, Alderman Strelchuk's change on it, I agree with him, second that, and I'm all for the development.
Thank you. Alderwoman Schneider.
Do we need to add an addendum for the clarification that the city lawyer gave about the pilot project?
I was just going to actually clarify that, whether the motion was based on the version that's on the dais or the one that's in the packet.
The version that would include the pilot would be my preference.
What is the one you put on the dais? Can you just give a quick summary of what changed?
Sure. Effectively, there were some concerns that maybe the language that was in the version that's in the packet wasn't as clear as it could have been. So we just basically
You can blame
clarified
me.
it and beefed it up a little bit to just clarify that we expect that there will continue to be a pilot on this property if they become tax exempt, just as it always has been.
The previous language is a little squishy, so I requested we sharpen the pencil on that today. So the final form you see in front of you is intended to remove all doubt that if they go tax exempt, the city will still get a pilot.
I definitely appreciate that change. I'm just thinking back to that study we did from EMS where over 60% of all the calls they get are from these facilities. So if they went tax exempt right afterwards, that would have been a little disappointing. So thank you to staff for vetting that.
Well, it was just timing issue. It came. We spoke at Planning Commission about it, and they were taxable, and we found out the next day afterwards. So,
Well, they were tax exempt and had a pilot. Then they became taxable. It wasn't an issue. It's just going back now. We just want to make sure that the crux of the original agreement will remain in place. We're making it a contingency of the rezoning to ensure that happens. 'Cause you're right, they do consume a lot of fire and EMS service, so it's fair to expect them to contribute something into the tax base to help pay for that. Alderman Strelchuk.
Yeah, this will be my second and last time talking on this. Yeah, and I just wanted to reiterate that, we were in a really pretty good motion as a city with requiring a pilot with properties similar to this, or even larger properties within the city. So if they were not tax exempt, so I'm just going to ask that city staff just really watches that so that we don't have an alteration on the dais in the future. It's just kind of a standard. It was in our standard language where it was really.
There was an agreement. The agreement ceased to exist when they went taxable.
My misunderstanding. I apologize.
It's not quite through the process yet. We're just making sure we close that loophole that could have existed. Yeah, you're right. We are very good about that when these are new proposals, but this one was tax exempt, went taxable, and now is intending to go back. So it's kind of a corner case we've never dealt with before. Very, very unusual. Mr. Birch looks like he has a comment.
We had a discussion this morning. When you say we and they, or they and them, the current owner wasn't subject to the pilot because they weren't the owner at the time. They understood they had some tax preference, currently, and they discovered they did not. So they're supportive of being treated equally with other similar users in the city and being subject to a pilot. So they haven't reviewed any new language that's on the, in front of the council today, but they're supportive of being a good resident and understand that they'll be treated the same as other similar projects. So
That's good to know. The intent of the language change isn't different. It's just meant to be a little less ambiguous about our intent. But thank you for that. It's good to know. Any other input from the council? We have a motion with the version that's on the Diaz, with the improved language and requirement for some screening to Mr. Liebau's property on the table. If there is no further input, please indicate your support or lack thereof when the roll is called.
Alderman Bushy, Alderman Meyer,
Voting on the ordinance as written, with the exception of the condition 15 shall be added that states that condition 11 shall apply to the amendment of the PUD zoning for the property such that the amendment shall be effective upon the applicant/developer entering into such agreement for fees in lieu of taxes as deemed necessary and appropriate by the city attorney. So
We're also adding the condition of the landscaping, correct?
correct.
Correct,
Yeah.
yes.
Yep. We got that one.
Okay.
Yes.
Alderman Hancher
Recuse.
is recused himself. Alderman Garrell. Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Gebhardt.
Aye.
And Alderman Stralcheck.
All right.
And that ordinance is adopted. Next, we have ordinance 2023-1645, an ordinance amending Chapter 58 of the Mequon Municipal Code to rezone St. John's Evangelical Church located at 1600 to 1717 West Mequon Road from R4 Single Family 3/4 acre to B1 Neighborhood Business District and IPS Institutional and Public Service with a planned unit development overlay and amend the city's land use map from residential 1.5 acre to neighborhood business and institutional in connection with an establishment of a proposed commercial office space. This was recommended by the Planning Commission on January 23rd, and the first reading was at Common Council last month on March 14th. Is there a motion to go into public hearing?
Move to go into public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We have 2 people registered to speak on this item. The first is Doris Zampolas, one of 11240 Valley Road, wishes to speak.
I have more questions than ideas, or I'd like to know how this land is going to be used. You say public office building, and then you say institutional service?
Could you speak into the mic, please? Sorry.
I'd like to know how this land is going to be used. You say business district and institutional service building? What is it going to be?
We can answer that in a second when we're out of public hearing. But
Really?
Please get out. Well, it's public hearing, so we just listen. When we close public hearing, we can respond.
You don't explain what this means?
We will explain when we close public hearing. That's how a public hearing works.
All right, then I will sit down and wait for the hearing.
Next, we have Josh Bartz of 11224 North Valley Road, who also wishes to speak.
Yes, so I am the property just west of the property in question. So, again, I do have questions. I was here on the 23rd. I guess I missed the 14th. I didn't hear about that. I guess my concern is, well, to back up, initially on the 23rd, it was a State Farm agent who's going to revamp the house, revamp the barn, and kind of be a low-traffic office, basically. On the 23rd, there was some discussion whether or not to include retail in that. I think ideally, residential would be the preference of a lot of people I've spoken to in the neighborhood. If we do go with this proposal, I guess my request would be to remove the retail portion. Mequon Road is busy as it is. People coming out of Valley Drive, that's kind of a cut through to skip the light at Mequon Road and Port Washington. So it's already people going through there, and they'll have a hard time seeing. And I just think, depending on what retail goes in there, there could be a kind of a high traffic, which would be a concern, being the neighbor. Yeah, so I think those are my comments. I think as it stands, the State Farm proposal that was kind of here on the 23rd sounds good, but that's really just an office complex or just a small office compared to retail. I don't know what kind of restrictions are on retail, but you know, I would rather not have a smoke shop in my backyard or something to that effect. So there's concerns there, and I'll sit down and listen to the response.
All right, thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak on this item? If not, is there a motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We're back in regular session. Before staff goes on, I don't think the intent of the use has changed. It's still the State Farm office. There was no intent to put any retail component in it. There is a restriction on making it into a restaurant someday. There was further conversation at, was it Committee of the Whole last month? Or last month's meeting to add some other restrictions to the property, making sure it wouldn't turn into a primary use as a bank that would generate a lot of traffic. We maybe still need a small amendment to how it's written tonight to memorialize that, but it's really just it's going to be, the proposal on the table is a State Farm agent occupying a house that'll get renovated for business use and will largely look the same as it is now. That's the proposal on the table, at least. So with that, sure, since public hearing is a little clunky and we can't respond, would you like to approach the podium again, ma'am, and ask another question?
When State Farm is done using this building as the house that's there, what protection do we have from some other type of structure going in? Whether it's State Farm's building a new and bigger building or some other business coming in there? What is the ordinances in place to protect us?
That was why the condition to make sure it never turns into a restaurant was imposed, and there was further conversation about adding some sort of other provision to make sure it doesn't turn into something as high of intensity use as a bank.
What about this institutional?
Well, yeah, we can let Kim explain, but institutional is just to memorialize the nature of the property being a church. Churches are institutional uses.
Okay, a church is
churches are
acceptable.
institutional
Church
uses,
is
hospitals.
acceptable, but another hospital or some such.
Well, why don't we this is where staff should take over. That's also the reason for the PUD overlay, which gives us more control over this site than what normal zoning district would. So with that, I'll let Director Tollefson take over.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, it's.
Are there any other questions? Let's get all the
bewildering-
questions out, and
it's
Director
bewildering
Tollefson
to
can
me
respond.
Because I walk around that neighborhood almost every day, and I see numerous beautiful office buildings that are empty for lease, for rent, and I'm wondering why this person wants this old house. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's an old house in poor condition for an office. It just doesn't make sense in my mind.
Well, we're not here to debate how much sense it makes. That's the
Well,
owner's
what I'm thinking is
that's
he
the
has
owner's
other
decision.
intentions. You know, State Farm has other intentions for that property. That's what I'm
It's
thinking.
a single proprietor. It's not State Farm Corporation. It's a single proprietor insurance salesman.
That's all right.
Let's
Single
let
proprietor
Director
insurance man
Tollefson
has
explain this matter
other
more.
intentions, whoever, or whatever you want to call it. That's my concern. What follows after he's done with that building?
I can't predict what will happen in 30 or 40
You
years.
have control over that.
Who's ever in the council in 30 or 40 years does, but we have some control now with provisions we put on. So let's
Oh,
let staff.
I'm not even thinking 30, 40 years. I'm thinking 5 or 10 years.
Well, let's let staff respond to that question.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Food for thought.
Good evening, Council. One of the things that controls the uses, whether it's today or in the future, is the existing zoning. So the property is proposed to be zone B1, and there's a certain set of limited uses that are permitted. And then there is a list of conditional uses. And the distinction between the two is that if it's a conditional use that would be proposed in the future, it would have to go through Planning Commission for review and approval. And there is a public hearing and a public notification of that. if there are permitted uses proposed, should the State Farm Insurance Agency be located there, but then decide to close, the B1 district for permitted uses allows for retail trade, personal and professional services, which is like a tailor shop, a beauty salon, photography studios, and then finance, insurance, and real estate services, such as banks, insurance offices, savings and loans, and security brokers. Those are really the only permitted uses. And so some of the steps that Planning Commission and Council has taken as you've reviewed this project, going through the approval process, is to put the restrictions on those potential for future uses. So the initial one by Planning Commission was to prohibit any type of restaurant, which is one of the conditional uses. So that would be prohibited under the planned unit development as recommended by Planning Commission. And then at last month's meeting, the Common Council talked about prohibiting a financial institution. There is one additional restriction, which is that the rezoning does not take effect until the building permit for the conversion of that existing structure is applied for. So we are making sure that the individual who is making this application is seeing through on the intent to utilize that structure. If all of this is approved, if the applicant follows through on conversion of that structure from residential to commercial, there is still building and site plan approval that's required to go through Planning Commission. So that will detail out the site operations and the locations of some of those features. In addition to the two public comments tonight, there were two individuals in the neighborhood that submitted letters, and I did receive a third phone call this afternoon for an individual that lives a little bit further north than the particular intersection, but had a similar concern about future uses, as well as whether the PUD meant that there could be expansion onto additional properties. And as all of you know, that would require acquisition of additional properties and a modification to the PUD. That's not something that we anticipate happening with the current application.
Thank you. Alderman Strelchak, not Strelchak, sorry, Parrish.
What did I do to you, Mayor?
I don't know, maybe you talk more tonight, so I thought you were Rob.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to jump in front of Rob here as the alderman for this district. This building is in District 6. It's part of a large church complex, which is off the tax rolls. I did get approached by several different potential, buyers as they were looking at the site when it became available. Most of them were, quite honestly, looking at tearing it down and stuff like that. And so when this proposal did come forth, something other than residential, I did feel that this was about as mild of a proposal as you could ask for. I do share the neighbors' apprehension about, the community's apprehension about commercial creeping west. And so that's one issue. Then there's the residential homes behind this development, which is another issue. So I am fully committed to, respecting the land use code in that regard, that I don't think that commercial should be creeping west. The staff did do a good job explaining, there's a road, I can't recall the road name, just west of the church, but that's about as far as this kind of little nook goes. So I guess I'm not opposed to a change outside of IPS. I did appreciate Planning Commission's restricting restaurants. I do think we went a little bit too far last month, and perhaps Alderman Bushy get a little dialogue going with him for his last meeting here tonight. Thank you very much. But he brought up financial institutions, and I think we're all reacting to what we hear from the community, which is, oh, not another bank. And yeah, and we all feel that way. But we've also quite often used the expression not picking winners and losers. So I do want to make it really clear to Common Council. I mean, we are rezoning this property to commercial. So, so anything within that commercial zoning could come forth and make a proposal. I think restricting banks altogether is a little burdensome. I don't want to see a bank there, but I feel like we're isolating an industry based on what we're hearing from the community. What I really want is no drive-throughs there. So that would be, regardless of what motion's made tonight, I'm going to have an amendment about no drive-throughs there ever. If it ends up being a little insurance office or, I don't know, a stock brokerage company, something low traffic, I think that's fine. So I think if we take away some of those things like a drive-through, we're going to be able to control what goes there 10, 20 years down the road, because that's sticking. So I guess that's my thought. I do greatly sympathize with the residents behind. It's not uncommon on Mequon Road or Port Washington Road. You know, you have the commercial frontage and then the residential right behind it. In this case, it just happens to be a church who has a lot of extra dilapidated property. It doesn't look good. I don't know that it's safe. I think the owner is going to put money into this property to make it safe again and occupiable, especially as it relates to the barn. So I don't have a lot of opposition to it. I'm always happy to meet with the homeowners. I do want you to know I'm going to fight commercial creep heading west. I think this is just a really unique situation. It's buffered between IPS, it's near the rest of the commercial, and I think we're going to restrict this good enough. So I would like you to consider removing financial institutions, because that's a really broad stroke, where I think some financial institutions could actually be a good, light, mild use there. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no, as written in the packet, there's no prohibition against financial institutions yet, but your suggestion for an amendment to eliminate drive-throughs would be an excellent way to prevent the kind that we probably don't want to build there from building there, while allowing ones that are less intense.
Isn't that in the revised motion, Kim, that was financial?
It's in the packet,
Yeah.
but not the recitals.
We stated it in the memo, but because that wasn't Planning Commission's recommendation and it wasn't acted upon last month, we just highlighted it in the memo
All right.
as an
Well, thank
addition
you.
if you choose.
Now Alderman Strelchak.
The other Alderman Strelchak. All right. Just to kind of give a little background on this, I was the one who recommended no restaurants. I'm definitely in support of no drive-throughs. You know, my intent, you know, as I was looking at the surrounding homes in the area, was exactly what the resident came forward and presented an objection to. What could it be next? You've got a good applicant. I've known him for years through acquaintances. I met him through social media when I was doing marketing, and he was active in social media. He's done different things. He's a water skier and is a family person and everything else. And he just simply wants to run and own an insurance company within the city of Mequon. He was renting. He shared in a previous meeting that this was in his price range for a building that he could own within Mequon without having to tear down and build something else. So just to give you a little more background on the person, you know, that's here. He's probably 10 years younger than me. He's got at least probably another 20 years of which he plans to be an insurance agent within the community. He hopes his kids would take it over, but you never know. And that's what the what next could be. So during Planning Commission, what I tried to do is limit as much as I could for the uses based on the fact that there are residential houses abutting up against the property. I didn't want to see a restaurant with big dumpsters or a heavy intensive use within that space, because I didn't feel it was appropriate, and I'm feeling that the other council members are mirroring that sentiment here as well. So just to give you a little background on that, I will make a motion for approval, but I will also add the condition that in perpetuity there will be no drive-through within that facility. We can take a second at any appropriate time, or if there's anything else that we want to add in to protect the residents, on that level, that would be appropriate as well.
Any further comments from the other members of the council? Yeah.
Second.
There's a second. Any further additions or clarifications we'd like to make? Hearing none. Yeah, we closed public hearing, yeah. There's no further comments. Let's bring it to a vote. Please call the roll.
Alderman Meyer? Alderman Hancher?
Aye.
Alderman Garrow? Alderman Parrish?
Aye.
Alderman Schneider?
Aye.
Alderman Gebhardt?
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk?
Aye.
Alderman Bushy?
That ordinance is adopted as amended. That concludes our lengthy list of, oh wait, it does not. There's one more. Good golly. One more ordinance before us for a public hearing. 2023-1646, an ordinance amending Chapter 58, Section 58-640 of the Mequon Municipal Code, redefining the reimbursement options for sanitary sewer costs. This was recommended by the Planning Commission on February 27th, the first reading at Common Council on March 14th, and further recommendation forthcoming from the Sewer Utility District tonight, where we all approved this item. Is there a motion to go into public hearing?
Move to go in public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are now in public hearing. Is there anyone here tonight who wishes to talk about this item? Seeing none, is there a motion to exit public hearing?
So moved.
Motion and a second. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are back in regular session to consider this ordinance. Are there any further questions or comments from the council, or is there a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That ordinance is adopted. Now we're through all the public hearing items. Next up, we have personal appearances and public comment. Citizens wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda may do so at this time. If you desire to be heard on any agenda item, may be heard when that item is considered. Please speak into the mic at the podium. Time limit is 5 minutes. Is there anyone who wants to speak on any item not on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on to public officials' reports. I have just one item. It's a proclamation I made some time ago that I'm going to read for everyone in this meeting. It's a proclamation recognizing Education and Sharing Day in the city of Mequon. A quality education is one of the significant foundations for the continuing success of our community, state, and country. In the city of Mequon, we place a high value on education and sharing. We believe that by providing opportunities for an excellent education, giving each child what they need to develop to their full academic and social potential, we can create hope for a better, kinder, and more united and prosperous future. In 1978, the United States Congress established April 12th as Education and Sharing Day in the U.S. April 12th was chosen to honor Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, a Jewish rabbi born on that day. Rabbi Schneerson advocated for the education of children with a focus on building character by emphasizing the cultivation of those shared values that we have been a bedrock of our society since the dawn of civilization. Although that particular day was chosen in honor of a specific Jewish rabbi, the purpose of the day is relevant to people of all faiths and backgrounds. Every president since then has issued an annual proclamation on April 12th urging Americans to focus on education and the betterment of society. Either the governor or legislature of all 50 states has subsequently proclaimed April 12th as Education and Sharing Day. We join other communities that have declared April 12th as Education and Sharing Day. Accordingly, I, Andy Nurbin, Mayor of the City of Mequon, on behalf of all citizens of the City of Mequon, proclaim Tuesday, April 2nd, which is when it was observed this year, as Education Sharing Day in the City of Mequon, and call upon government officials, educators, volunteers, and citizens to advocate for an equitable and value-based education for all. That concludes my public comments. Are there any from the city administrator?
None tonight. I'm sorry, none tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Perfect. We will then move on to the consent agenda. We have 12 sets of meeting minutes from various boards and commissions and 2 resolutions on the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda or withhold any item for further discussion?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any comment on any of the items? Hearing or seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the consent agenda is approved up through item N. That brings us to, I think we have 3 ordinance first readings. The first is ordinance 2023-1647, an ordinance amending Chapter 58 of the Mequon Municipal Code to rezone properties located at 14097, 14137, and 14207 North Birchwood Lane from R1 Rural 5 Acre to R1 Rural 5 Acre with agricultural overlay. This was recommended by the Planning Commission on March 20th, and is a first reading.
I'd like to suspend the rules and take up ordinance 2023-1647.
Okay, is there a motion? There's a motion.
I'll second.
There's a second. All those in favor of suspending the rules, roll call vote?
Well, you can't on this one. It's Chapter 58, so it does require a public hearing.
It requires public hearing, so we can't suspend the rules. Okay. We'll have a public hearing next month. Okay, that is a first reading. Next item is ordinance 2023-1648, an ordinance amending Chapter 10 of the Mequon Municipal Code related to residential swimming pool standards. This was recommended by Public Welfare Committee on April 11th and is a first reading. The last ordinance first reading is 2023-1649, an ordinance amending the City of Mequon operating budget for fiscal year 2023 to provide supplemental building inspection services in the amount not to exceed of $91,520. This was recommended earlier this evening by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules and take this item up now.
We have a motion to suspend the rules on this item.
Second.
And a second. This one's not Chapter 58, so we can suspend the rules and take action on this if we needed. We need a roll call vote for suspension of the rules?
Not for that, no.
Oh, okay. All those in favor of suspending the rules and taking this matter up now, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we have now suspended the rules. Are there any questions or comments on this item as proposed by staff? Or is there a motion?
I'd make a motion for approval.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve. Alderman Strelchak.
It just was based on staff's request that we suspend the rules and take this item up now so that we can get this in line for this season's inspections.
Thank you. Yeah, just for the public watching at home, this item is to amend the budget to allow us to expend funds not originally anticipated to be needed this year to help us get through the volume of building inspections we have to do while we get our staff fully trained up and certified. So we want to make sure we don't keep anyone waiting for services, so we can keep things moving through at a timely pace and not fall behind. So that's the high-level overview of what we're doing with this item. Are there any further comments or questions from the council? We have a motion and a second. If there are no further comments or questions, please call the roll.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrell. Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Gebhardt.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchak.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy. And Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
And that ordinance is adopted. Now we move on to resolutions. This one will look very familiar because it's just like the ordinance. This is Resolution 4037, a resolution approving a contract for the same supplemental building inspections we just modified the annual budget for with Bella Consulting LLC through December 31st, 2023 at an annual estimated cost not to exceed of $91,520. This was recommended earlier this evening by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Garrell. Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Gebhardt.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchak.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy. Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
And Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
That resolution is adopted. Next up, we have Resolution 4038, a resolution adopting revised fiscal year 2023 compensation plan for non-represented employees and allocating $49,215 to align various salaries with the new pay grades contained therein. This was also recommended earlier this evening by Finance and Personnel.
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments for staff? I would note we budgeted $50,000 for this last year, and so this is just within that budget. So congratulations to Justin on the very accurate estimate last year at budget time. We have a motion? We have a motion and a second. Any further comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye when your name is called.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Gebhardt.
Aye.
Alderman Stralchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy. Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
That resolution passes. Next up, we have Resolution 4039, a resolution supporting the Mequon-Thiensville Bike and Pedestrian Way Master Plan and Mequon Road Bicycle and Pedestrian Facilities, and authorizing application for Wisconsin Department of Transportation Alternatives Program TAP Grant. A recommendation forthcoming from Public Works this evening.
Public Works approved of it, and I moved the motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further comments or questions from the council? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And that resolution is adopted. Resolution 4040, a resolution approving an award for public safety building boiler stack replacement contract to Dillett Mechanical of Waukesha, Wisconsin, in the amount not to exceed of $77,000. The recommendation forthcoming from Public Works.
Public Works approved of it, and I move to approve.
Motion and a second to approve the boiler stack contract. Any further comments or questions? If not, please call the roll.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Gebhardt.
Aye.
Alderman Stralchuk. Alderman Bushy. Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow. And Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
That resolution is also adopted. Resolution 4041, a resolution approving an award of the 2023 Buntrock Avenue Sidewalk Extension Project contract to BMCI Contractors of West Bend, Wisconsin, in the amount not to exceed of $45,000. This is part of our town center TID project. Recommendation forthcoming by Public Works.
Public Works approve, and I move to approve the resolution.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further comments or questions from the council? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Gebhardt.
Aye.
Alderman Stralchuk. Alderman Bushy. Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow. Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
And Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
That resolution also passes. Resolution 4042, a resolution approving an award of the 2023 GSB 88 bituminous seal contract to Farner Asphalt Services of Waunakee, Wisconsin, in the amount not to exceed of $199,000, and authorizing a budget transfer from the road or the right-of-way asset capital account to the annual road maintenance account in the amount not to exceed $174,425. Recommendation is forthcoming from Public Works.
Public Works approve, and I move the resolution.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Stralchuk. Alderman Bushy. Alderman Meyer. Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow. Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Gebhardt.
Aye.
And that resolution passes as well. Next up, we have Resolution 4043, a resolution approving the award of a Cortland Drive Drainage Improvement Contract to Allways Contractors Incorporated of Elm Grove, Wisconsin, in the amount of $106,000. Recommendation forthcoming by Public Works.
Public Works approved, and I move the resolution.
Second.
So motion and a second. Any further comments or questions? I know the neighbors on Cortland Drive will be happy that this is moving forward. Hearing no other comments, please call the roll.
Alderman Bushy. Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow. Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Gebhardt.
Aye.
And Alderman Stralchuk.
That resolution passes as well. Next up, we have Resolution 4044, a resolution approving the award of a contract for the Fiesta Lane Drainage Study to R.A. Smith of Brookfield, Wisconsin, in the amount not to exceed of $30,000. Recommendation forthcoming from Public Works again.
Public Works approve, and I move the resolution.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further comments from the committee, the commission, the council? Anyone? Public Works has been busy. This will be another item that the residents of Fiesta Lane will be happy is being pushed forward. The drainage issues of their on that street have been going on for a long time. Alderwoman Schneider's shaking her head up and down, and I used to represent that district as well, so I know it's been an issue for a long time, and it's finally bubbled to the top of the drainage list, and we're happy to getting going on it as well. We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll if there are no other comments.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow. Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Gebhardt.
Aye.
Alderman Stralchuk. And Alderman Bushy.
That resolution is adopted as well. Next up, Resolution 4045, a resolution approving a development agreement for Swan Ridge Farms Phase 1 consisting of 41 lots within a total 83-lot subdivision located immediately south and west of 10129 North Swan Road. This was recommended by the Planning Commission March 20th. Further recommendation forthcoming from the Mequon Water Utility Commission, which was approved earlier this evening. And further recommendation forthcoming from the Sewer Utility District Commission, also earlier this evening, that was approved by that committee or commission. Is there a motion?
I move to approve Resolution 4045.
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion on this item or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that resolution is adopted as well. Our final resolution, Resolution 4046, a resolution approving an award for a contract to replace 2 pumps and 6 valves at the Tamerlane Drive Lift Station O to Sable Mechanical LLC of Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, in the amount of $117,614. This was recommended earlier this evening by the Sewer Utility District Commission.
Move approval.
Motion and a second. Are there any further comments or questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow. Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Gebhardt.
Aye.
Alderman Stralchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy. And Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
That resolution is adopted as well. We have no specified unfinished business from prior meetings and no specified new business. That leaves us with one motion left.
Move to adjourn.
There's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Good night, everyone.